let's charge the damn mound, shall we? Thoughts on Ken Rosenthal started this, and then follow-ups, obviously, from others. But Jackson Chouro and the potential that he is going to sign a pretty big contract before he ever plays a game in the big leagues. Our boy Kurt Hogue said as recently as last night, momentum was building in the Chourio extension talks, with league sources expressing optimism that a deal targeted around 8 years is working toward completion. It would be a massive move for the Brewers. 8 years. Jackson Chouro is, I would say, a consensus top 2 prospect. I've seen some places put him over Holiday based on the ceiling, but regardless, Jackson Chouro is expected to be a stud in the big leagues. And the Brewers are saying, hey, dude, want to get really rich before you ever play a major league game? Also, that might help us, bring you up to the bigs for day one of the 2024 season. So what do you think?
Well, I like for Jackson Chouro as long as it's a fair deal. I hate, though, that teams they do this for what Scott said, to get, this will entice us to call you up sooner. Like, why does that matter? Why does it matter if you haven't been called? I think the first one I remember is Evan Longoria had this happen, right? And then they called him up, and he went on to obviously have an unbelievable career. But there are some guys who sign deals and they don't work out. I mean, there's the Phillies guy, right? Was it Kingery?
Scott
right?
Kingery didn't.
He signed one, and it never
had
really
like a minute in AAA.
Never really worked out. I mean, I get it. And if you're a player and somebody comes to you and says, "Here's 8 years, $120 million," and you're 19 years old, I think he is, or 20 years old.
20, yeah.
You're like, I can't say no to that.
It's a lot of money.
It's an unbelievable amount of money. And then, 8 years later, he's 28, and he hits the free agent market again.
When
he
can
cash in again.
Prime. And that's
it's almost impossible as a player. Now, you don't want to, because the union will say, don't undersell your value, but the value is, to me, I'm going to get I'm throwing numbers out there, but let's say it's $100 million. Guess what, union? I have $100 million in the bank, bro.
Let's say it's $80 million. Let's say it's 8 years, $80 million.
Yeah, still.
And it's like he's from Maracaibo, Venezuela, and I'll never forget talking to Salvador Perez about his extension he signed. It was like 5 years, $7 million. The first one he signed, it was low, and he goes, "Do you know how many B's $7 million is?" He said, "My family never has to work again in Venezuela." He's like, "I signed it." He said, "I signed it, and I got hurt the next month or whatever. That spring training, he got hurt." He goes, "It's the best thing I ever did." So it's all relative on what your situation is. Like, if he gets 80 million, he gets 70 million, he gets 90 million. That is life-changing money for everybody, not just a 20-year-old from Maracaibo. And what it also does, which you guys didn't hit on, maybe you don't trade Burnes. Maybe you go out and you find
No, I think
maybe you go out and you find, maybe you give an opportunity to, hey, you know what? We're in the market for a starter that's going to get 3 or 4 years. Hey, why am I going to sign here? Well, we're bringing up Jackson Chouro. We have Sal Frelick, who was the second most productive rookie in the National League in the second half when he got called up. We have Bryce Terang, who's going to slide over to shortstop. We might, we still have Willie Adames. We're going to, that kind of thing. Like, it's going to entice guys to come because of the longevity of it, almost to the point of, like, now Wander, it's not kind of worked out right now, but the Wander thing, it gives guys who are going to sign a 3 or 4 year contract. Oh, well, why would I sign here? Because you're going to get rid of the guy in the next 3 years. You're going to get rid of him during my contract that I'm there.
Yeah, but to me, this is we're going to trade Burnes, but we're going to sign Chourio kind of deal, because this is a long-term thing.
Like allocating the money somewhere else?
Yes. This isn't saying we're going to win this year, because he could come up and not be good and have to go up and down a few times like we've seen with some other guys, right? So this is the long play for the Brewers, saying, we've already signed him. So it sends a message to the fans that we're in it for the long haul. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, we're going to try and compete and bring in guys this year, because once Woodruff went down, that was like, okay, they non-tendered him, right? He was gone. Right, right now you look at them, they're like, okay, if they trade Burnes, they can get some pretty good pieces back for Corbin Burnes for not only this year. Let's say you trade Corbin Burnes and, I don't know, you get 4 players. One's probably a major league ready player, and then the other 3 are usually how it works is you get like one major league player that's has a little bit of time, right? 2 guys that are like AAA, AA, fringy guys that are close, and then you get the one you always throw in like the A ball, low A kid that has all the potential, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, let's hope this kid works out.
Right.
Okay, so there's more pieces, and they save the money, but then they can still, I don't know. It's great for Chourio if this comes. It's great for the Brewers because they have a lot. It's like the Braves when they signed Acuna and Albies, right? Oh man, look how great this is. We have these guys, and then they locked up Riley and everyone, obviously all Murphy and everyone down the whole line.
Look at Acuna's deal.
That's what I'm saying. How great it is. Whew. But that's why you're a team. You approach the guys, and as a player, you take it because you're going to be young and still have a ton of money and still be a free agent. I don't think this has anything to do with Burnes. I think they're still going to trade Corbin Burnes because I think they can get a huge return for him. Now, who would you rather trade for? I know Dylan Cease has 2 years of control left, and Corbin Burnes has 1. But who would you rather have pitching for you?
Burnes.
Okay,
I don't even think it's close right
there's
now.
Your answer.
It's stuff-wise, Dylan Cease is up there with anyone. But coming off the 2023 seasons for both, and Burnes having more of a track record, I would say, even though Cease had the 1 year where he was insane.
No, Burnes has the trophy on his wall.
Yeah.
He won it.
Also,
he actually has
not to mention Burnes is top whatever every year for years. Like even his like quote bad year now is like, oh man, it was a down year. I only
3.1 ERA,
7th in Cy or 6th in Cy, right? So yeah, I agree with that. But on the other end, it's been a little weird where people have been like, a lot of the insiders that I actually trust have been like, I don't know with Milwaukee, kind of what they're doing. Because think about it. Does what St. Louis did so far scare you? Do you think like, ooh, the big bad Cardinals, here they come? Cincinnati obviously is the team that I like this past season and going into next year, but they have to do some things. And they did do one thing, Emilio Pagan signing for a reliever. Okay, 2-year deal to try and add some pitching. They have a lot more, in my mind, pitching depth to work on with that ball club, but Cubs haven't done anything yet. I'm sure they're going to. Point is, the Brewers won the division. Most of their team is coming back. Big Woo, terrible loss. He didn't pitch
a lot. Yeah,
he didn't pitch a lot though, and they still won the division. So
it's a loss going forward, though.
If Jackson Chouro comes up and he is the next Acuna or something like that, right? All of a sudden you have a bat like that, which they've been looking for forever. Who's to say that the Brewers can't win the division this year? And then it's hard for them to be like, oh, we kind of sold 2-3 guys like Adames and Burnes for prospects. It's a tough sell, and they don't like to do that.
They don't sell. They don't completely break it down. Not in the last 6-7 years. They don't completely break it down. They always have somebody. Yelly, like look into Yelly's numbers. He was awesome. He did really, really low-key awesome for this team last year. Yes, he's getting compared. Burnesy kind of hit on it like when we were talking about Cy Young stuff. They're sitting there going, well, compared to your Cy Young year, it wasn't quite as good. Like Yelly's numbers compared to his MVP year, I get it. But he was the MVP that year. Like Yelly is a solid player. And of these 6 contracts, I'm not going to remember everybody, but Evan White, Jonathan Singleton, Scott Kingery would be the ones that the
I can give you all of them if you want. There's like 2 or 3 more, right?
Who are the 3 others?
So Luis Robert Jr. has the highest ever for not touching the big leagues yet. It was 6 years, $50 million. Plus there were the 2 options which are going to get picked up for him. Eloy Jimenez did that as well.
Yep.
And then you got the other 3.
Okay,
those are the 5 players that have signed long-term contracts before ever sniffing the big leagues.
And so how many of those worked out in year 1? How many of those worked out overall? Like, would you say Eloy's has worked out?
It's 50-50. But also, you have to keep in mind, like, John Singleton signing a $10 million contract, $10 million in Major League Baseball to any baseball team.
We're not going to get into it, but there were some other circumstances with that one that came into play.
But,
but even Scott Kingery,
$24 million shows you what $24 million actually is to big league teams.
Nothing.
And I'm not saying Scott Kingery is not a good player. I'm saying it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the actual what that dollar amount actually means. It doesn't mean anything to the teams. And it shows you what that like prospective value is compared to, it's like pot equity in poker. Like, you know what? That's fine. I'm good. Go get it. Go hit some dingers. Like, look at what would have happened if Acuna didn't sign his deal. Would they have called him up? He has 5 years, 159 days. Like, they kept his service time down so that he wouldn't reach free agency. He's got a nice little contract now.
Mm-hmm. Just keep in mind, too, for Chourio, like even making a comp with him and Kingery, for example, even at the time when Kingery was looked at, pretty highly regarded, still two different stratospheres
Completely
in terms
different.
of ceiling,
Yeah.
right? Different worlds. They were like, Kingery's ceiling, maybe I think they said was like a Zobrist or something like that. Jackson Chouro can be Acuna, like in center field. He can be a Gold Glove
He's a
center
premier
fielder,
position.
hitting 30 homers a year, hitting over 300. His ceiling is top 3 player in baseball. I know he's 19, but the potential there is so high. It looks like the only thing that would make this contract look bad is if he has a devastating injury situation. Like even if
But it's easier for
just
that
his
position
floor.
player, though. I mean, it's hard for a position player. There's not a lot of
Yep.
injuries as a position player, especially as an outfielder, that you can't. Because, okay, let's say, God forbid, something happens to one of his legs. You can still put him in a corner position, right? And the bat will still play.
Sure.
So that's why now, for a pitcher, you can do things that you can't come back from. Like you blow your shoulder out. Oh man, I can't come back from this, and it's happened a lot of too many times. Okay, so to me, there's less of a risk when you sign these. That's why you see mostly position players making these deals, because the team feels like, hey, if God forbid Jackson Chouro does something and he can't play center anymore, we can stick him in right, or we can stick him in left, or we can DH him and still get the bat out there. That's why you see position players. You just read off the list. There's no pitchers that are doing this because they don't know what you're going to get. And plus, once you get to the big leagues, a pitcher is just completely different than, because it's just the lights, the batters, everything. The stuff plays differently. You just never know with pitchers. So it's not a risk. I mean, yeah, obviously money wise, but it's not a huge risk for the Brewers. And it's a great thing for Jackson Chouro and his family.
43 stolen bases, too, if you
exactly.
needed to know.
Sorry, did I forget a tool? My bad, because he's got them all.
He's striking out about 100 times.
That's low
per game. That's low for 500
per season.
At
that's low. In
yeah,
500
per
that's
game.
a low number.
That's it
a
per
lot.
game.
Yeah,
that would be a record
you only strike out 100 times per game.
per game.
No
That's a
big deal.
record.
Yeah.